Hey, Krista. Thanks for joining me today. I just wanted to ask you a couple questions since you are the business coach for dietitians.
Oh, thank you. That's so nice. I'm excited to chat with you and I'm excited to answer your questions.
If you could start off by just telling us who you are, what you do, and the benefits that someone would get working with your service.
Sure. Yeah, sounds good. My name is Krista Ko. I usually go by Krista Ko because my last name is obnoxious and it's hard for most people to comprehend. So I started the Dietitian project. Actually, it's only been in operation for about a year, but essentially what it is a business coaching service for dietitians. So I started that business because I really recognized that there was such a massive gap that exists for RDs in terms of just like entrepreneurial skills and entrepreneurial confidence and competence. It's just not something that's taught. And I think what's really interesting is we graduate with a skill set that we can easily turn into a business. I wouldn't say easily, but we can turn into a business. But there's a lot of fear and a lot of uncertainty around doing that. And oddly, a lot of stigma around doing that. I don't know why that exists, so anyways, that was the gap that I identified and so sort of took it upon myself. I've always been an entrepreneur, have worked in corporate and 9-to-5 jobs, but I've always done side hustles on the side. And so have learned so much just through my own trial and error and just through those processes that I thought, well, why not sort of turn that into something that can be helpful for dietitians? And so I've been working full-time as a business coach for dietitians since last March.
Now, what you offer to entrepreneurs is very valuable in any part of healthcare. Why are you focusing on dietitians specifically?
Yeah, I mean, it's a great idea or it's a great question. I think that there's some nuances that exist with being a regulated health profession, and it takes some awareness of what some of those nuances are, just in terms of the boundaries that we are expected to sort of operate within, and I think it just, for me, it was like I really want to become really really good in a specific area, like I just wanted to build my expertise and I wanted to really build my knowledge and my skill set in something specific so that I could be as valuable as possible. And that's actually evolved over time. So when I first started business coaching, it was a little bit broader and I was, focusing on, any dietitian business. So if you're a dietitian, you wanted to start a business, I was here for you. And now it's sort of taken on even a more focused niche in terms of really emphasizing private practice. So majority of the clients that I work with, probably 90%, are starting their own private practices. And so that was the approach that I took at the beginning. And that's not to say that I'll always continue in that direction. There's probably going to come a point where I'll want to expand beyond dietitians because, hey, I've kind of mastered that and I want to try something different and work with different people. And so who knows when that's going to happen. I think that's the cool thing about your own business, right? It's like you start somewhere, you pick something that feels right, and then you have the ability to change and adapt as time goes. You're not stuck with it forever. So that's it. It felt right at the time, and I think it's definitely still right, but we'll see if that shifts as time goes on.
Speaking of shifts, in
Yeah.
2020, we've seen the rise of the entrepreneur, thanks
Yeah.
to COVID basically making it impossible to do anything face to face.
Sure.
Do you feel like that stigma for dietitians to start their own business is going away?
Yes, I do, which is really it's really interesting to see. I only graduated in 2016. So it wasn't even that long ago. And just to see how much things have changed in that last 5 years is incredible. Like in terms of when I was in school, nobody really had. There were like a few key people that had an online presence and were, starting online practices or were starting practices, but by no means were any students doing it, which was really interesting. You just didn't see it. Like, students were not doing it. And it was funny because I actually, at the time, I had a food blog and I felt kind of like ashamed of it. Like, I was like, I didn't want to share it because I was like, I don't know, there was just a lot of sort of judgment and it was very odd. And I love that we're seeing like just more students just like getting into it and learning those skills while they're still students, students who are starting businesses, students who are learning how to communicate. It's incredible. I love seeing that. And so I definitely think it is shifting and it is changing. And that's awesome. It's awesome. It really makes me happy.
Something that I think is really awesome is you've helped that change. Because when I first connected with you over Instagram as an RD2B, you were really promoting students getting on Instagram, like from day one, and then you were offering like social media coaching. And I think that kind of support is really important, because would you say the average student or a dietitian who wants to get online, their main feeling is fear?
Mm-hmm. Oh, big time. For sure. It's fear and it's just lack of confidence. But the thing is that like that is a skill set that needs to be developed. It's not something that you're going to be good at from day one. Like, honestly, if I were to look back, and I can, and you can too, you can go back on my Instagram account, you can search back in the archives and see what some of those first posts were like. And it's funny because it takes practice. You can't just, expect that on day one you're going to be excellent and you're going to be communicating in the perfect way. It takes practice. And so it's a skill that needs to be developed for sure. And the fact of the matter is, this is what I always go back to. People are consuming health information different than they ever had before. They're looking to Instagram, they're looking to TikTok, they're looking to YouTube to answer their health questions. They are, right? That is the reality of the situation. And so if we are not there, that is an issue, right? Like, as a profession, if we as people who are skilled and are trained to find evidence-based information and communicate evidence-based information, if we are not there, then that's a problem, because otherwise it's not going away. The field is going to be dominated by other people. And I think in a lot of aspects, unfortunately, it is. And so it's a problem if we're not there. And I think we've done ourselves a disservice by, not coaching people sooner within the profession to like be confident enough to get visible online. Yeah.
I liked what you said about you have to practice this skill. I was listening to Pat Flynn talk about like podcasting, and he said a really great quote: you have to be the disaster before you can be the master. And when I was looking back at my own Instagram as well, I was like, ooh, that's a disaster. But it's okay, I'm gonna own it.
Yeah, and it's, oh my gosh, totally. You have to, one thing I always tell my clients, you have to suck in order to get good. You have to suck in order to get good. If you don't look back on where you were even 6 months ago and feel a little cringy, then you didn't start soon enough,
Embrace the cringe.
or you waited too long. You got to embrace the cringe. Right? Like, it's embarrassing. It is. It's funny. It's embarrassing to look back on where you were, but it's also awesome because you can really see how far you've grown, and you got to suck to get good. Yeah.
Very true. Now, you mentioned there's a lot of information, or rather people are looking for their information online, but putting information online from a dietitian or nutrition professional is very different than marketing oneself online. Why do dietitians and nutrition professionals need to market themselves?
Yeah, it's a great question. So, like I was saying before, people are looking for their health information in different ways. And when we talk about marketing and we think about marketing is not just communicating with somebody about our product or our services. That's not what it is. It's a part of that, but that's only about 20% of it. The other 80% of it is proving and showcasing the value that you have to offer. So when you put content out online, whether it's a blog post, whether it's a social media post, whether it's a podcast, whatever it is, that is a part of marketing. That is your marketing strategy, because you are proving, you are showcasing your expertise and the value that you bring to the table. And so it's really an 80%, 20%. 80% of the time you give value. So you write an amazing blog post, you write an amazing whatever it might be, you do a podcast. 80% of the time you do that without really an expectation. You're not asking anybody for anything out of that, but it all contributes to somebody's perception of you and who you are and what you bring to the table. So that's when we talk about the communication piece is actually a big part of the overall marketing strategy. However, we do need to know, okay, then how do I turn that and shift that into being able to ask for something in return, right? Because that is the end goal. We want to make money. We want to get clients. Then you don't have a business. If you're not doing that, you don't have a business. So we do need to shift that. And that's one of the most challenging things I find for people and for RDs specifically. And I think just people within the healthcare profession is learning that skill, because it does not come naturally by any means to majority of us. I think, talking about or asking for something or believing, I think a lot of it actually comes down to, belief that we deserve to be paid for our services. That is definitely a learned skill. So anyways, that kind of all brings me back to this. It's all sort of a big overarching strategy around what marketing means. And I don't know if that really answers your question, but I think it does indirectly.
So maybe let me summarize it.
Sure.
Basically, if a dietitian or a nutrition professional wants to have a business, they have to market themselves online. Otherwise, they're not going to have any business.
Yeah, for sure. Definitely. And the one thing I would say with that too is that online, I like to talk about online and offline, because I think online is important, absolutely, and it is very important. But there's also a piece around offline, which is like, what are the connections that you already have? What are the relationships you've already built? Those things that you can also leverage to market yourselves. But absolutely, like online, especially nowadays, it's a huge piece of the pie. Huge piece of the pie.
Do you think if a dietitian were to rely only on their offline connections, they could have a thriving business?
I mean, it's a good question. And so my answer is yes, because we've seen it done before. People who have been in business for a long time. There are people out there that don't have an online presence. However, I think the word thriving is the key here, right? I think you can have a business and you can get clients, but not to the extent that you would if you put some energy and attention into your online presence, right? And I think we're seeing that people who have been in the profession for a while never had an online presence before and are realizing, oh, hey, like this is something I need to get on, because it's just the way of the future, right? Like that's just how it's going to be. And so unless you want your business to slowly fizzle out, then you're going to have to jump on that bandwagon for sure. So I think it's like, if you've been in your role for a long time, you have that community, you have that really strong community, you're already known as an expert in that community. That's a little bit different. But if you're starting out right now, I would say you got to have an online, like that is just an absolute must. Yeah.
And we're even seeing this change with grocery stores starting to have to deliver online, just because COVID made that a reality. And then I think in the future, people are just going to expect that to continue. Do you agree?
Yeah, Oh yeah, for sure. And I think um, it was interesting also because at the beginning of, pre-COVID, having an online business, so actually seeing people one-on-one online, was not that common. Like it wasn't that common, like virtual practice. Majority of dietitians, I think, felt like, you needed to have a physical space in order to be able to see people one-on-one. And I think that that's actually been an awesome thing that's come out of COVID. If you can identify some positives here, it's like
You got to take our
just
wins
that
where they are.
we absolutely do, right? And I think there are a lot of positives, and one of them being that, yeah, I think people, so number one, the practitioners are like, oh, I can actually just offer my services online. And guess what? Like it's way cheaper for me to do that. And I can actually make better money because I have more access to people. I'm not worrying about paying rent for an office space every month. My overhead costs are much less. So it's like the practitioner is coming around and realizing, oh, okay, no, this is actually a better model for me. But then also the patient or the client, like they're getting used to receiving healthcare in that virtual way, which was not the norm before. And so I think that, yeah, it's just like a whole new world for virtual practice. I think that's super exciting.
I agree. Now,
Yeah.
if someone comes to you as a brand new entrepreneur, they want to start their nutrition business, what are their top 3 priorities?
Yeah, so great question. So the very first thing I think is more so around like mindset, and I want to say productivity, but I don't mean productivity in terms of like getting a lot of stuff done. I mean, how are you going to work this within your life as it stands right now? Majority of people, when they're first getting started, they already have a 9 to 5 job and they love the idea of, or they're in school full time or whatever. And they love the idea of having a business, but are they really willing to do what it takes, like in order to get it started and do the work? Because that's something that I do see sometimes, is like, somebody loves the idea of it but hasn't really thought through, oh, I'm actually going to need to work during evenings and weekends right now on my business while I'm getting it started, right? Like I'm going to have to change my schedule and I'm going to have to change my lifestyle, because guess what, it takes work. It doesn't just happen overnight, and it doesn't just happen automatically. And I think, unfortunately, sometimes social media can communicate that to you, that it's like it's easier than it is, and it's not. It takes consistent effort, it takes consistent work. And so you need to go into that experience really thinking that through and understanding, is this something that fits within my life? Is this something that I can I am going to put the time and energy into? So that's number one. And then number two, when we actually get into, okay, now we know you're committed to this. Okay, number two is we really need to figure out, who is this audience that we're trying to serve? So that's really the starting point, because we cannot create our offers or our packages or our prices or whatever our services that we're putting out there into the world. We can't create those without knowing what our audience needs. We have to know what our audience needs in order for us to create those. And I think that's a step a lot of people miss. They're like, oh, gonna start a practice. Oh, gonna, assign a price to an hour of my time, and then that's what I'm gonna do. And it's like, no. We need to be more strategic about this. We need to think, okay, who is this audience? And I create my services based off of that. And knowing our audience also determines our marketing strategy. So what am I going to talk about on social media? I need to know my audience in order to know what I'm going to talk about on social media. And so that's definitely step one. And then usually from there, we would actually get into defining your services. So what is that going to look like? And the pricing piece, which a lot of people struggle with. So those are sort of the three beginning pieces. And then after that, that's when we'll get into marketing, we'll get into website, we'll get into all of that other stuff. But I find that we need those foundational pieces first.
And I like that you do that. When we had our session together, right from the beginning, it was clarify what's your idea, who is it for, and then how can you reach those people? And that's something that's, fundamental to marketing, because you can pour thousands of dollars into your marketing strategy, but if it's not targeted to the right people, then nobody's listening.
Absolutely. Totally. If you're speaking to everyone, you're speaking to no one.
Mm-hmm. And if you're speaking to the wrong people, that also doesn't help either.
Yeah. Then you're speaking to the wrong people, and you're going to get the wrong people, and that's not going to make for a fun business.
Mm-hmm. I see that a lot when I write copy or like make videos for people. They'll have they sound like really nice value statements, like help you live your better life. But then if you ask, it's like, well, who's living the better life? And what's better for them? Why is it better?
What does that mean? Yeah.
And how are you going to give them a better life? All questions.
Yeah, so true. Yeah.
All right. Absolutely. So the top 3 priorities are first committing to being an entrepreneur, getting clear on who you're targeting, why you're targeting them, and how to target them, then going into your marketing strategy, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Exactly. Very solid advice. Love
Thank
it.
You.
All right. So you also work with dietitians who started their business, but they need a little bit of help to really make it grow. What would you say their priorities are?
Yeah. So that's definitely a bit different. First of all, the one thing we need to do always is kind of go back to the fundamentals. I always assess, okay, where are you at right now? Where have you been? How have you grown? What's that look like? And what's not working for you right now? Like there's something clearly that you're not happy with where you're at. And so what is that? What's that issue? And that usually leads us to figure out, okay, is it a marketing issue? Is it a pricing issue? Is it a confidence issue? Like, what is it? But I think generally for a lot of people, it's about teaching to continue to be consistent, because I think what happens is often people get into it and they're really excited. They start their business, they're super excited about it, they hit the ground running, and they post every day on social media for 2 weeks, they write a couple blog posts, they're feeling great, and then it doesn't give them what they and they don't even really know what they thought it was going to be. But I think they had this sense that it was going to be like an instant success, but haven't defined what that success actually looks like or means. And so are left feeling disappointed, where they're like, oh man, like I didn't, I'm not making 10K from day one. I'm not getting all the clients in the door from day one. And I think it's just reinforcing that, like, that's not how it goes in the majority of cases. It takes consistent effort. And so it's just sort of, I think a lot of times it's like, it's reminding people that, like, no, you're not a failure because things aren't going exactly as you thought. Like, this is so normal. This is how businesses are. Like, it can be a slow burn, especially at the beginning. It takes time. It takes time for us to grow. It takes time for us to build up an audience. It takes time for us to gain people's trust. We can't just expect that from day one. But if you're not consistent and you're not committed to doing this long term, it's never going to amount to anything. So I think that the first piece is just like gaining that consistency or getting that consistency back. I think also too, like maximizing what the assets that you've already created. So like sometimes it'll be like, oh, okay, so somebody's defined their services and, maybe they're priced not quite right, or maybe they're doing one-off sessions, which I generally don't recommend. And they just need to sort of take that and we just need to tweak it a little bit. So it's like, we need to redefine a better package. We need to redefine a better service or a better price point for their ideal client. So that might be a piece of it. And and also taking the stuff that you've already done. So, you know, if you have some awesome blog posts, if you have some awesome Instagram posts, like repurposing that content in different ways, in order to get more visible and to reach more of your target audience. So it's like maximizing what you've already done. So sometimes somebody will create something and then they're like, like I created it and I don't know what else to do with it. I've left it and it's there, and I wrote a blog post, I shared about it one time on my social media, and then I don't know what to do with it now. And that's not the case. We need to really, you know, maximize what we've done. So that's number 2. And then number 3 is working more structure into how we're going to get clients. So we need to have a consistent sales process in place in order to get consistent clients through the door. And so so just to give you an example, like from my own business or from any dietitian business, it's like, okay, so, you know, we know that when we offer some sort of like a free challenge or a free webinar or a free masterclass or something like that, that's really valuable and it gets a lot of people through the door, it gets a lot of attention on our business. When we offer something like that, we get a lot of attention and consequently, we get clients out of it. And so if we know that that works, then we keep repeating that process over and over and over again. And that becomes a consistent engine for getting clients through the door. So a lot of times it's like, okay, so let's figure out what that sales process looks like, because a lot of people don't have that established. It's figuring out what that sales process looks like and then just continuing to repeat it again and again.
So that first priority you mentioned about consistency, do you find it ironic that as nutrition professionals in training, we talk about so often that dietary changes and proper nutrition takes consistency and it's not a quick fix, but then in business we're like, where's my quick fix?
Oh yes. This is like, it is so, yes. Like, yes. It's funny. It is really funny. And we all get stuck in that. Like, I'm not immune to it either, right? Like we're so excited about what something could be that we just want to get there, but we haven't put in the work yet, right? And so it's the exact same thing with nutrition, lifestyle change, right? It's the same thing. I think, and it's funny because I feel like, and I don't know how much, you know, you follow in the world of sort of business and entrepreneurship on social media. I happen to follow a lot of people in that space. And I think I'm seeing some interesting, like, you know, similarities between the two industries, right? Where it's like, there's so many coaches out there, or so many platforms or whatever out there that are all about like, make X amount of dollars in your first month, you know, blah, 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 blah.
Mm-hmm.
And you got to question, right? You got to question it. You got to say, like, how much of that is really like true fact and true data? I do question that. And it's just so funny because it's like, that's the same as like the diet industry. And we don't see that. And so it's just funny because, like, you know, we pride ourselves on this understanding that things take time and consistent effort. And we have a bit of a blinder up when it comes to entrepreneurship.
I think we should start calling our businesses like our nutrition clients, because then maybe we will apply this principle.
Love it.
Consistent.
So true.
Yep. So everyone listening, they've heard it here first.
Yeah, so true.
All right. Now, what would you, in your experience, what would you say are the main challenges that dietitians and other nutrition professionals face when they're trying to set themselves up online?
Yeah. So number one is fear of doing it wrong, fear of being criticized, fear of just putting yourself out there, fear of being vulnerable, fear of all of those things. That is a big piece of it. And it is very vulnerable It's hard to put yourself out there online. You're putting yourself out there, you're putting your heart and your soul and your hard work out there. And it's so vulnerable. It's just so vulnerable. And so sometimes people let that feeling overpower their willingness to get visible. And I think that's a big piece, is you got to just turn that off, and you got to just decide, you know what, I'm doing this. I don't care what anyone else thinks, because guess what? If somebody has an opinion about it, then, and I'm worried about that potential opinion, then they're winning here, because then I'm not taking action on what I've always wanted to do. And I'm letting myself, stay stuck because of somebody's imaginary opinions of me. And so, and so it's like, it's real fear. And I totally get it. I used to feel the exact, and I still do in some ways, like it still comes up for me. And I always have to remind myself, no, like, you're entitled to your opinion. You're entitled to your thoughts on these things. And people want to hear it, right? Like, they're here because they want to hear what you think about these topics. So yes. So number one is going to be fear. Number two.
Oh,
sure,
sorry.
go
Before
ahead.
we move on to number two, if
Yeah.
your client comes to you and they say, "Hey, Krista, I'm afraid to
Yeah.
get online," what do you tell them, or how do you help them overcome that fear?
Yeah. So it's like any fear, right? In order to get over it, you just have to do it. You got to do it. And when you do that first thing and you realize nothing bad came out of it, and in fact, it felt really great. And in fact, you had a really positive response. And I've seen this happen time and time again, where it's funny because I always tell my clients, like, when you launch a business, share it with your friends and family. Like, share it with your friends and family. And they're always scared to do it. And I think because there's just this level of vulnerability there. But I always encourage them to do it. And then once they do, they're like, that felt amazing, because you know how many positive responses I got back that made me feel so good. And so you got to take that first step. You just got to do it. Like, you just got to do it. And I think that's one of the benefits of having a business coach, is that you have that level of accountability, somebody who's expecting you to do the work, and they're there to support you, but they're there to be your coach, right? They're like, they're going to hold you accountable to those things because you agreed to this process, and you're committed to this business. And so if that's what it's going to take, then you got to do it. So yeah, might sound a little tough love, but
It's a good tough love.
Yeah.
It's the best kind of tough love. So a lot of business coaches for dietitians, they say similar things like, you just got to do it, get over your fear. What's something that you do for your clients that to help them get over this fear that other business coaches might not do?
Really interesting question. I like to draw from my own experiences, because I have been there. Like, I get it. I've had food blogs. I've had like more failed food blogs than I can even count. Like, because I've always been a creative person. I've always like wanted to do those things. And so many times I've done things and they're just like, they just don't work for whatever reason, or I just didn't put the time into them for whatever reason. But like, I've been there, I've felt that fear. And so I think just really, just being there for that person, and like, just reinforcing in them that, like, I know how it feels, but I know how it's going to feel when you do it. And I know it's going to feel great. And sometimes it's just like, I'm not expecting that somebody goes and like does a full on IG live on, their subject matter expertise the next day. That's not the expectation. We start with something that feels comfortable. So maybe it's just, showing a picture of yourself on your Instagram feed and talking about something that feels safe for you. So like, how did you get to where you are today? What was your educational background like? I mean, it's not the most thrilling topic, but guess what? Like, you're starting. It's baby steps. You're putting yourself out there. You're starting to get comfortable with it. So You do that, you see what happens, and you realize, hey, nothing bad happened. And actually, it was really nice to get some of the positive reinforcement, and it felt good to put myself out there. And then once that little bit of confidence is instilled, then somebody naturally feels like they can do something a little bit bigger. And so it's taking those little baby steps. I don't know if that's necessarily unique to me, but that's my approach.
One thing I really like that you do is you refer people back to your earlier Instagram posts, because that really proves to them that it's okay to post something that you may not like later, but it's a start. And I think that's something that, a lot of business coaches, I haven't worked with a lot of business coaches, so I can't speak for all of them, but I think some of them might just have those words of encouragement, but you come with the proof and like, I actually did it and you can see it.
Yeah, I mean, and that's something I say to people, like, never delete your Instagram posts. Never delete your old Instagram posts, because one day you're going to want to look back and you're going to want to see how far you've come. And you have to own that. You have to own that you are not perfect, and that this has been a journey for you, and this has been your own unique journey. You got to own it. You can't be ashamed of that. You can't be embarrassed. You might be embarrassed by it, but you got to let that be, and you got to let other people see that. I believe that, because none of us are perfect realistically. And so I think it helps us develop a better connection with people when we can see that they're not either.
So aside from like the emotional side, the emotional challenges, what are some other issues that someone might face when they're trying to get themselves online?
Yeah, absolutely. Next one I would say is talking about the same topics that everyone else is talking about. And so there's, and to some degree, it's okay when you're first starting out, because you need something to feel safe. And if somebody else is talking about it, it feels safe to talk about it. So, one thing I see all the time constantly, what's the difference between a dietitian and a nutritionist? Everyone talks about that topic, which is okay.
Mm-hmm.
And it's because it feels safe. And that's a great starting point, and that's totally fine. But at some point we need to start talking about different things. It's only when we start talking about different things, and we really start to put our lens onto a concept or onto a theory or whatever it might be, that we start to see traction. If we're just writing about generic nutrition related things that somebody could read about anywhere they wanted, that's not where you get traction by any means. So we need to start thinking and looking introspectively, thinking a little bit deeper about like, what do I really care about? Like, what is really interesting for me that I want to talk about? And what is my ideal client actually facing in their everyday life? Like, another example I like to use is, like, nobody's asking about like vitamin C, for instance. Like, nobody's asking about that topic, right? And so if they're going to be asking about, they're not sitting there thinking, like vitamin C, interesting, right? They're thinking, like they're thinking, oh, it's cold and flu season, and I'm really concerned about my family getting sick. I wonder if there's anything that I can do from like a diet perspective to ensure that I'm getting more, health promoting nutrients or whatever. That's the thought process that they're having, right? And so we need to think about it in that way. It's like, instead of writing a blog post all about vitamin C, it's like, no, we write a blog post that's like, how to keep your family healthy this cold and flu season. And that includes happens to include information about vitamin C. It includes information about a bunch of other things. It includes, practical tips, practical strategies. How do I get more vitamin C in my diet in a way that is, easy and fun and tastes amazing? So do you see how the two are different?
Yeah, I think the thing that's missing, the key, is understanding the search intent, like what people are looking for that will lead them to this information. Like you said, people care about vitamin C, but only in the context of, how do I stay healthy? And I've heard of this vitamin C thing.
Yeah, totally. And if you're struggling with that, one of the things, and I can't remember who said it. I can't remember who said it. It was somebody in the business community. Anyways, I was on some sort of a conference call, and somebody, might have been my business coach. Her name was Kelsey, and she and they said, follow your clients throughout the day. So think about who is your ideal client and walk through their day with them. So I don't mean actually doing that, but I mean thinking about, okay, so if my ideal client is a young professional woman, maybe she's 25, you know, she works a 9 to 5 job. Okay, so let me think about that day for her. And then we extract marketing messages from that, or we extract topics from that. So she wakes up, she's in a rush because she's, you know, scrambling. She doesn't like to wake up early. She's in a rush. And so she's like, blah, and she doesn't have time to eat breakfast. Okay, so like that's an interesting junction point. Like she doesn't have time to eat breakfast. So maybe a blog article on like, you know, what are some fast on the go breakfast options that you can just like grab and go? You know, you don't have to spend a lot of time on that. Okay, that's interesting. Okay, so she's scrambling, blah, blah, blah. She gets to work. She has, you know, coffee. It's like black coffee because she's like fearful of putting a bunch of sugar in it because she doesn't really get that. And she's, you know, she's heard so much online and in the media about sugar. And so that's an interesting point too, right? Like, okay, this is a common thing for this demographic, is what they're reading in the media. And you know, what is sugar? Is sugar evil? All of that stuff. And so we continue along that process and we think about, what is their day looking like and how can I meet them with a marketing message?
All right. Now, dietitians, do you think they should be using both social media and a website?
So I do personally, because I believe that social media is a snapshot and I think a website is a home. So social media gives you a snapshot, but it's not a good space. If somebody was looking, and this happens all the time, where like you come across somebody and you really like what they're all about and you're like, this person's cool. Like I want to know more about this person. I want to know more about their services, about what they do. It is very challenging to gather that information off of their Instagram page, because suddenly you have to go and search back in the archives and hope that they've talked about that at some point in time. Versus if they have a website in their bio, you know, you just click on the website, it's going to give you the information that you need. And so again, social media, it's a snapshot, but I really do believe a website is your home base.
I agree with that. I actually just posted something on LinkedIn. I compared social media to a car because it's
Mm,
reliable until it's not. Like
mm,
the algorithm changes or something. But I really like that home
totally.
analogy for websites because I think it's true. You
Yeah.
know, it's where you host everything, and as long as you know Google doesn't change
Yeah.
their algorithm,
Totally.
fingers crossed, then they can always find you.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think it also
Yeah.
gives people.
Exactly.
Do you feel like it also gives potential clients more ways to find this person? Like maybe they'll find them through Instagram, maybe they're Googling something and then they land on their blog post.
Yeah, so I mean, potentially. I think that because of just how SEO works, right, and how Google works as a search engine, it is challenging to increase your SEO so much that when somebody searches dietitian for digestive health or whatever, that especially when you're just starting up, you're going to rank at the top, right? Like that takes time. It's not something that happens overnight. And so absolutely, like we still want to put effort into, you know, into boosting our SEO and making sure that it's really strong in order to get to that point one day. But it's not always going to be that direct traffic source. I think where it really helps is like when you can utilize your social media or whatever other online places you hang out to be able to direct people to your website. And then that I think it acts as a sales strategy, because people can spend time there. They can spend time really getting to know you. They can read some of your blog articles, and then they can look at your services, and then they can read your About You page. It's all there for them. And so, again, it's kind of going back to those, like, it's that home base where somebody can learn everything that they need to know about you. They can get to know you better, and consequently are more likely to become a client.
And actually, from a copywriting standpoint, your website can also be the sales for you. Like your homepage and stuff, everything can be directed to to persuading someone to buy from you. And that's really powerful because, that's like, you don't have to even be at home for someone to still knock on your door. And I think that's incredible.
Yeah, absolutely. Totally. It's so cool. It's so, so cool. I couldn't agree more.
Do you ever have people clients come to you, they opened up, their website, and it's just not generating business?
So yeah, I mean, for sure, that definitely happens. I think, like, for the most part, dietitians will find that they'll start to get like a slow trickle, but maybe it's not happening as fast as they thought it would be. I mean, dietitian services are in need. Like, people need these services, right? And so it's not necessarily something that you're like, I think sometimes we think that we're competing with a lot of people, but we're not really. Like, there's not that many dietitians for the amount of people that actually need help with their nutrition. And so a couple things that the dietitian should do in that circumstance is really think about, okay, are you clear about who you're communicating to? Are you trying to communicate to everyone? That's number one. Or maybe you're not putting enough into your marketing efforts. So you talked about your business one time on Instagram, and that's it. We have to regularly remind people that we are here and we are taking on clients. That's part of it. We have to regularly remind people, but then also just like patience. It's not gonna happen overnight. There's no such thing as an overnight success. I think it was Richard Branson that said that, but there's no such thing as an overnight success. Like, it takes time, it takes effort. And again, bringing it back to the whole mindset thing, like, you need to commit to it. You need to commit to it knowing it's not going to be easy.
I agree with that completely. Something that, like, when I look at people's websites, I always look for, if I were their customer, is it easy for me to find out what they're going to give me? And is it easy for me to access? And like, the number one, or actually the two main issues I see on people's websites are, they don't make it clear what they offer. They introduce themselves, but they're not like, I will give you this. And then they don't have like a call to action button right next to that statement. So many people will come there, look at the page, and then there's nothing for them to do, so they leave.
Yeah, that's such a good practical tip for people. Absolutely. Like, you need to be really clear on that stuff. Sometimes it could just be like a little, something as simple as that, as simple as what you just said, right? Like, maybe it's just you haven't made it clear to people what it is that you do and what it is that you offer them.
Mm-hmm. And that button as well, just, contact me.
Throw that button in there. Yep.
Yes. That could be the difference between like no money and, $1,000 right there. Just one button.
Because we've all been there, right? Where we'll go on somebody's website and we're like, how do I talk to you? Like, how do I, right? Like, how do I get into contact with you? I can't figure this out. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, I've gone to a couple of websites, and then by the time I kind of finished reading the page, I forgot why I was there. And then I just left.
Yeah, totally.
All right, so the next question I have for you is actually about video marketing. Do you think dietitians are using enough video to market themselves?
Yeah, I mean, I think starting to, but definitely not enough. And I think it goes back to a few things. So number one, fear. I think like video is even more vulnerable than like a static Instagram post, right? Because It's you. It's if you're doing something live, it's you live, which is a lot of times just like a little bit of that fear. But I did an interesting little experiment where I did an IG live for 5 days straight just to see what that would result in. And that resulted in so many more followers on Instagram than anything I've ever done aside from that. So I should do it more often, but things get, and you just don't. So I think no, but I think that there's so much opportunity there because video allows somebody to build that relationship with you in a way that a static Instagram post does not, especially Instagram stories, for instance. Like people, I don't know about you, but like I binge watch Instagram stories way more than I even go through my feed now. And I'm so pumped when my favorite Instagrammer, or somebody I really like has an Instagram story. Like I love that. I love watching through it. So so put some effort into that for sure. For sure. It doesn't have to be anything like fancy or crazy. It's just like you showing up and talking on your Instagram stories.
Instagram definitely, I think, is a hotspot for dietitians trying to build their business. Do you think that their dietitians are using enough other types of videos, like video ads or explainer videos, so that they can reach people who aren't on Instagram?
So no, I don't. But I, even myself, have not figured out how to effectively work that into my business either. Like I know that, and I know, but to me, and I think this is a barrier for a lot of people, I know that, but to me it's like, oh man, there's so much work that would go into that I'm not in a place right now where I can like commit that time to it. And so definitely I think there's totally tons of opportunity there, especially with YouTube, like putting up YouTube videos. And so yeah, I totally agree, but I don't think I've really cracked the code on that yet.
It takes a while to crack the code on video marketing.
Yeah.
I myself am still cracking it, and I've been writing video scripts and making videos for 3 years. It's a long process.
Oh, I'm sure. Yeah.
In an ideal world, what kinds of videos would you like to see dietitians making for themselves and for their business and for their clients?
Yeah, I mean, so I love explainer videos, like the type of videos that you do. I know you do a lot of videos, but I've also seen your explainer videos. I love that style. I think that is like, it's such a great way to be able to get a point across really well, effectively, in like a fun, concise format, right? So I love that style. But I think just like video in any capacity, even things like vlogs, like just like what's your life like as a dietitian? What do you eat? People are so fascinated by that stuff. They just want to know more. Like they just want to know more. And so those are kind of the two areas that are sticking out to me. I don't know. Do you have any thoughts on that?
I think vlogs are pretty good. I think if someone's going to be taking the time to write a blog post, they can easily turn that same content into a video. And it could be them talking. It could be stock footage. It could be, an animated video. It doesn't have to be anything fancy, but people like videos and they want to engage with them. And actually, as a tip, people will stay on the page longer to watch a video, and then that kind of helps your rankings in Google.
Cool. Interesting.
But I think that if, because right now people are making a lot of Instagram content that's basically like a blog post, they could turn that into a video, no problem, throw it up on YouTube, put it on their blog, and then bam, they've increased their audience.
Totally. Yep, absolutely.
All right. And then my final question for you. How does someone make their business stand out in the sea of nutrition and wellness professionals?
Yeah. So the only true differentiator between any of us is us ourselves. That is the only true differentiator, right? Like the information is the same, right? The information is the same. That's fact. Those are facts, that there's only so many different ways that you can present those facts. But what is different consistently is us and the perspective that we have on a topic, the lens through which we view a topic, because we all have different backgrounds. We all bring different attributes and different backgrounds to the table. And so that's the biggest difference, is that, or the thing that's going to differentiate us is inserting yourself into your business, making sure that you're present in it, and that you are showing up for it, and that you are being personal. You're building that relationship with your audience. Because again, like, people connect with people, they do. And so if I build that relationship with you through your social media, through your Instagram, whatever, I'm so much more likely to want to work with you than if I've just seen some static Instagram post talking about vitamin C, Right?
I agree. All right.
So yeah, so it's just, it's putting you into your business.
All right. Thank you so much for taking the time to talk with me about this. I just want to do a quick summary so we can recap everything. You are the business coach for dietitians, and you are helping dietitians actually take steps to get their business going and keep it going.
Yes. Hey, that should be my tagline. That's great. See, you're such a copywriter. That needs to be my tagline.
Feel free to use that tagline.
I may. You're going to see it show up on my website.
I hope so. And then you work with dietitians specifically because this community does need support. We are able to provide the information. We just need that extra push. And for someone who is going down the entrepreneurial route, they need to commit. That's the most important thing. Then they need to, they need to commit. And after that, they need to clarify who they're targeting, what they're offering, and then they need to actually start promoting themselves. Correct?
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah. Amazing summary.
Thank you. It's all of my teaching days coming out.
I love that. That's amazing.
And then for people who are in the business already and then trying to expand, they need to clarify what they're doing, be consistent, and then also, again, just get out there, promote themselves, and keep going at it. And have a website.
Yeah, totally.
And use video.
Those were the key points. Absolutely.
And if you'd like to contact Krista to work with her as your business coach, how can people contact you?
Yeah, sure. So it's just thedietitianproject.com, or you can email me, Krista, Krista, at thedietitianproject.com, or just send me a DM on Instagram.
All right. Awesome. All right. Well, thank you again. This was fantastic to chat with you about this. Thanks for joining me today.